Right. I call to order the meeting of the Rockport Select Board of December 14th, 2020. We are still conducting board meetings via Zoom. And at the top of the agenda is information as to how to submit comments during the meeting to the address of the email address of the town manager or through the live stream chat function. The first item on the agenda, welcome everybody. The first item on the agenda is the town manager's report. Bill?
Thanks, Deborah. So I'm just going to briefly go over the written portion to kind of summarize it. So I worked with the Maine Municipal Association to develop two legislative bills for this next session. One is both are being sponsored by Representative Dudera. The first bill authorizes municipalities to adopt an ordinance that would extend an excise tax exemption to volunteer firefighters. And this exemption would apply to their vehicle that they use to respond to fire calls with. And the ordinance would be what we call a local option ordinance, so that municipalities don't have to adopt an ordinance, but if they decide that they would like to, they can. And within that ordinance, they can have other restrictions on what the exemption is or how it could be, how it would have to be applied for by those volunteer firefighters. So I look at it as kind of it's more of a benign, good help, hopefully, to try to maybe recruit some volunteer firefighters. We obviously have a pretty good contingent here in Rockport, but it's also a thank you to those firefighters for their help and assistance, because certainly the money that they get for on-call or trainings is not, they don't do it to get rich. We all know that. I determined with town clerk Linda Greenlaw, she looked at the excise tax collections just quickly from some of those that volunteer firefighters here in Rockport. We're looking at about $3,300, which is, when you're looking at $850,000 or $875,000 in excise tax collections, that's a pretty small amount for us to be able to forgive. I did run this by the Mid-Coast Municipal Association, which is a group of managers and some select board members from communities that don't have managers, last week, and there was broad support for it from that group. And I've also, just today, I've sent it on to the Maine Fire Chiefs Association. They don't meet until January, but hopefully they would get behind this proposal as well. And I will be sending it on to Senator Miramon as well to see if he'd like to support this as well. And I will note that Select Board Member Kelly was the one that first brought this idea forward to me. It's been quite a while, but we had to wait, of course, until the legislative session opened up. So I think it's definitely well worth putting it out there. The second bill relates to something we've been talking about, which is the lien cost that can be recovered by municipalities for wastewater liens. And so currently it's a $13 flat fee that we can recover from those that have liens placed on their property for delinquent payments on wastewater. And this hasn't been increased since 1987. So certainly costs have increased for us. And so working with MMA, they suggested a $25 fee, increase it to $25, which is a big jump. Not sure how the committees and the legislators will feel about this. But the other thought is that if they don't like that fee, then maybe we could put a CPI built into the law so that it would be increased on an annual basis. And it's worth noting that if the CPI had been applied from 1988 on, we would be up around, I think, $29 for a fee instead of 25. So,
Bill, question.
Sure.
I had originally sent to Vicky Dudera this idea, which we had that came out of some of our discussions with the board, as I noted. Right. There was another one that I had sent to Vicky too. Do you recall what that one was, or if it was lost in the shuffle or rejected? I couldn't find my email.
I don't recall. Was it around wastewater or?
No, I don't think so. And I sent it around the same time that I sent this one to you guys. Suggested this one. Okay, well, I'll see if I can find it. Is it too late to,
It isn't. We have till Friday is the closure date, so we have
okay,
till
well,
Friday.
I'll see what it was and see if I can find it. Okay, thanks.
I'll try to do a search too to see if I can find it. I don't remember what. I don't
Yeah,
even remember there being
separate
another time.
ones, and I think they were both pretty close. One was this wastewater one and the other was pretty close in time. I'll see what I can find.
Okay. The capital improvement plans, we have been internally with staff reviewing projects, providing updates to the plan. And that plan, the draft plan is currently in my hands to be reviewed and edited. And then it will go to the capital improvement committee on January 5th at 5:30 for discussion and review. We have obviously several projects that were completed during this past construction season. We have all kinds of updates to continue in that plan. So that's been working behind the scenes. The library, long awaited, much anticipated, will open on Thursday at 9 o'clock in the morning. We are limiting to 10 patrons when we first open, simply because of the pandemic. And we're trying to keep patrons to a 30-minute time limit, if you will, just so we can get as many people into the building as possible at first. And of course, masks are required to enter the building. It'll be the first level, only the main level that will be open to begin with, as we're still waiting for the state to do an elevator inspection that will allow us to open up the lower level. The lower level will allow us to increase to 15 people to be in the building because there'll be more space for patrons to sit and read or whatnot. The lower level entrance and exit door is only going to be an egress door for the time being until we can get the lower level patio finished, which is part of the landscaping, of course, which won't happen until the spring. We are putting in a temporary walkway, wooden walkway that will allow us to have people on the lower level. So that Public Works is putting that in probably tomorrow. And I think it's important, and we've said this several times before, but to say thank you to 5 builders and architects once again. The project came in on budget, will come in on budget. We're certainly not done yet. Charlie Fertini, Nate Yater, and Bettina Dalton are the ones that really made this happen for the town. I need to be credited for constructing this, the beautiful space that it is. And those of you that haven't been in yet, you'll certainly be excited to see it. We also need to thank the architect Steve Smith and engineer Will Gartley. I also want to thank Mike Young, our Public Works Director, who really has been this past month or so chasing cats as we try to wrap up certain things with our contractors versus FI subcontractors, but making sure everything is coming together at the end. And owner's representative Mary Beth Van Kuren, and of course Ben Blackman, the library director. I'm surprised his hair doesn't look like mine after going through this project, because there's been a number of things that just pop up all the time, whether it's where to put the AEDs, or whether it's where to hang the art that's being donated. There's been just a number of different things that come up. Never mind the construction efforts. And of course, the Rockport Library Foundation deserves a huge amount of credit for, without their fundraising efforts, it wouldn't have been constructed the way that it has been. They also raised more money, as we all know, more than the $2 million they originally committed to, so that we could have new furniture, fixtures, and equipment in the building, it just makes the building complete. And they also had another donor, a large donor, that committed extra money for the lower level to bring that up to a higher grade, if you will, and a much more usable, functioning space. And unfortunately, we won't be able to use that space much while we're in the pandemic, but once we get out of this pandemic, it really will be a significant space for us to use, both for library programming, but also community needs. Onto another topic, the tax acquired property at 280 Rockland Street. We did advertise that for bid. We did not receive any bids. They were due on November 30th. We will be re-advertising. And actually, since the deadline closed, we've had some potential buyers contact us with some interest. So we will be re-advertising that shortly. Kind of waiting until we get through the holidays because it doesn't make a lot of sense to advertise it at that point. Not
Bill, this is Mark here. Should we post that as far as trespassing, if it hasn't been already?
We have not taken possession of that property. If we post it and take possession, then we have to add it to our insurance and we assume liability.
All right, just checking. Thank you.
Yep. As you all know, the employee, usually in the holiday season, we have an employee appreciation luncheon where all of the staff gets together and shares a meal. Obviously, this year we can't do it that with every employee being in the same location, so we are breaking it into departments and or locations. And we'll have those, there's some scheduled this week, and then there's another one scheduled for next Monday with town office staff. We are doing them in different locations where we can be spaced out with smaller numbers. So those still will be happening on a much smaller level, but I think it's important that I will be attending those and thanking the employees for their work through the year, especially this year with the pandemic. We Public Works truck bid. We are part of the plan for this year is to purchase a new wheeler truck for Public Works. Those bids came in on December 9th. We received 3 bids plus 1 for equipment. Public Works Director is currently reviewing those to provide a recommendation to me. We'll have action on that by the board in January. I've spoken about the Maine Economic Recovery Grants before, and most people generally know about these, but this was the money that the state put into a grant program to provide grants to businesses and nonprofits. And there were 2 rounds that were issued. We're still issuing some in the second round. These grants were processed by the local economic development districts, EDDs, throughout the state. And our local EDD is Midcoast Economic Development District, of which Bill Napower was the executive director. And we contract with them for his planning services, as well as those of Brian Dancause, the economic development specialist, and Orion Thomas, also another planner. Bill had asked me when they found out that McEd would be processing these for this region, which covers essentially just south of Belfast, all of Knox County, all of Lincoln County, all of Saginaw County, Brunswick and Harpswell is the region. When he first found out that they would be processing them, he asked if we could process the checks for McEd, because they outsource all of their bookkeeping and financial services. And once we found out that we would be getting reimbursed for the work, I certainly agreed to it after speaking with Megan Brackett to ensure that we could handle this with our regular workload. And so far we've processed 516 checks, which is a substantial amount. And that totals, the total for the region, I don't have it written down, but I believe it was something like $22 million for grants for the businesses and nonprofits. They were capped at $100,000 each. Not everyone received $100,000, but there were several that did. The good thing for Rockport is that with those being processed here, we receive $100 per check processed. So if you do the math, we're looking at over $51,000 in revenue that we did not anticipate that will be coming into Rockport, which is substantial, obviously. Phase 2 grants are still being processed, so there's still a few that will be issued. And then there will be another round of grants that's currently open that will be a lot less than that. But I do want to say too that in Rockport, there were a total of 18 grants that were issued totaling over $1.1 million to businesses and nonprofits. So that's a pretty significant bump, even though obviously their businesses are struggling, but it certainly is a help to them. So I'm glad we could play a small part in getting that funding out to the businesses and nonprofits. The investment committee met on December 8th, and they're reviewing the investment policy. They have several recommended changes to that as they prepare to issue a request for proposals for investment services. So that investment policy is expected to come to the board at your first meeting in January, assuming that the committee will get that finalized. They'll also be reviewing their bylaws as well to get those to the select board for approval, even though they were approved this past March. I do have some good news on the bridge lights for Pascal Avenue. I've made some significant progress with DOT, and we're at the point now where we're just trying to find poles and some lights that can be installed, so we can determine what the costs are and the time and the timing and how it will work, whether DOT will do the installation or whether the town will have to hire someone to do that. I'm hoping that we can find some lights that will match the LED lights that were recently installed throughout town. So we are working on that. Generally, DOT uses the same company that we use to purchase our street lights. So we certainly should have some synergy there when it comes to having similar lights. Any questions for me on my report?
I just wanted, Bill, too, to thank you for all the work on the library. I know that turned into a much bigger job for you. And I think without your diplomacy and the ability to work with all the different parties, I don't think we'd be where we are. So thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And per your comments, there are a lot of people who deserve a huge amount of thanks and gratitude here. And hopefully we will have an appropriate time to express that after COVID.
Yes, hopefully we will.
Okay, anything else on Bill's report? All right, the next item on the agenda is public input on non-agenda items. Bill, do we have anything?
I do not have anything at this point.
Okay. Next item is amendments to the agenda. Does anybody have suggested amendments? All right, moving on. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which we have a resignation from Parker Hackett on the Harbor Committee, 2 anonymous general assistance donations, and meeting minutes of November 9th and November 23rd.
I move the board.
Yeah, there you go.
I think Mark was first.
Mark was, he's good at that.
I move the consent agenda be accepted as presented.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Yeah, real quick, I'd like to thank Parker Hackett. I'm sure we all would for his many years on the Harbor Committee as a member, and also to formally thank those folks that provided the 2 anonymous donations.
Absolutely. Anything else? All right, roll call vote. Michelle?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, moving on to action items. We have several committee applications. Thank you for joining us this evening. The first 2 are for the Economic Development Committee. Jennifer Lloyd Mirabili. Is it Mirabili? I'm sorry, Jennifer.
It's Mirabili.
Mirabili. Okay.
Anything works too, but that's
I've
just
known you
fine.
for a couple of years, and I still aren't. Yeah. And the second is Dominic Cordisco. I actually had kind of twisted the arm of not really twisted the arm. I sought both of these individuals to join the Economic Development Committee that I'm the liaison to. Both, as you can see from their applications, have outstanding background and so forth to contribute to that committee. As is our custom, Jennifer, would you like to say a few words about your interest in being on the committee?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, Deborah. Yeah, when I had received the reach out to consider joining this committee, my first impulse was to say, oh, I'm so busy, which we all are, of course. But as I thought about the opportunity and some of the unique work that the committee is doing right now, some of the grant money that's available, it also seemed an opportunity for me to kind of give my time back to the town. I haven't really, years ago, I was on the investment committee for a little while. I've lived in Rockport for on and off over the last 30 years, but the last 15 years here. Otherwise, I lived up in Appleton. You know, when I think about the unique challenges that our town continues to face as we look at the sometimes conflicting balance of development and trying to encourage businesses, help our tax base, while still balancing our scenic beauty, the culture of the town, while still balancing the family friendliness of this town. And of course, Rockport has a very wide reach going, you know, I live out over by Symington Corner. So you go from the village and all the way out, and it's quite diverse. So, so I saw this as an opportunity to really dig in a little bit into some of the decisions that we're up against as a town and see how I could contribute. And I've been in banking for over 30 years. So even though I'm in the wealth management group where I've spent most of my career, I also started way back when, about 1 million years ago, as a, you know, a commercial lender, and did a lot of economic development type lending. So I have a little bit of an insight on how we can help people get where they need to go if it's something the town wants. So
Great. Questions, board?
I move the board appoint Jennifer Lloyd Mirabili to the Economic Development Committee with a term ending June 30, 2023.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call. Michelle,
Yes.
Jennifer, or Jeff.
Yes.
I'm looking right at Jeff and I said Jennifer. Denise,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Thank you, Jennifer. We really appreciate it.
Wonderful. We're so happy to have your background and
Thanks for
expertise.
working with you.
thank you. Thanks for your support.
Thank you. Dominic, so would you say a few words for us?
Thank you, Deborah. And it feels a little bit like deja vu all over again, because it was a year ago or so that I appeared before you in person and was appointed to the Comprehensive Plan Committee. So I know some familiar faces and some new ones are here as well. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I would say that I'm looking forward to helping out in any way that I can. Just for those who don't know me or don't know that, I am here in New York, and I'm in New York right now. My wife, Amy, and I, we bought a house in the village over a year ago, but we've been coming to Rockport for over 15 years and love it very much, and are looking forward to spending more and more time up there. Our plan is to, over the next 10 years, perhaps a little bit less, to gradually increase our time so that the bulk of our time will be up in Rockport. And so our focus is definitely there, because that's moving where we're moving ahead. In terms of economic development, this is what I do. I'm a land use attorney, and so I do primarily projects that try to balance economic vitality with also what communities are looking for. That is what I've been specializing in for the bulk of my career. I represented a project here in New York. It's the first theme park that's being built in the Northeast in decades, and that's Legoland New York. That's a significant thing that I'm very proud of. But I'm not mentioning that because I'm not suggesting that Rockport or anywhere in Maine needs a Legoland or anything like that. It's more about understanding, how to ensure that communities remain vibrant but also true to themselves. And so that has been my focus. And to the extent that I can offer any assistance or guidance or suggestions, I'd be happy to do so. I do remember Mr. Kelly asked me last year, because I'm an attorney in New York, whether or not I was going to be trying to get admitted in Maine. And the answer to that was no then, and it's still no now. So I'm not looking to do any work. In fact, I go to Maine to try to get away from work. So so I'm not looking to transplant my career there, but rather to bring any expertise or energy that I can, or ideas. I'd be happy to do so. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah.
I move the board appoint Dominic Cordisco to the Economic Development Committee with a term ending June 30, 2023.
Do we have a second? I second it. Any discussion?
I probably have the same question I did last time, Deborah, about the committee appointments. Does this committee have a majority of its people that are Rockport residents?
Yes, it certainly does.
Okay, well, I'm just taking note of the address, and before we fill it with out of town people, we have to make sure that.
Yeah, no, it's not other town people. He is not a full-time resident, but he has a place here in Rockport.
Residents, excuse me, I misspoke.
Oh, residents, yes. Yes, the majority of the committee is full-time. Anybody else? Okay. Okay, Denise?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you, Dominic. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Look forward to working with you.
My pleasure.
Okay, and the next committee appointment we have is Nancy Albertson as an alternate member to regular member of the Harbor Committee. Nancy?
I didn't ask Nancy to join us because we were just appointed to a
Yes, we just had.
Opera Committee last time. So
Okay.
But I can weigh in just on some of the parts. Nancy's been a very active member of the Harbor Committee. Even in her alternate role, she has often taken, in fact, almost all the time now, taken notes for the committee and been present at most all meetings. So a good choice for sure.
I move the board appoint Nancy Albertson to move from an alternate member to a regular member of the Harbor Committee with a term ending June 30th, 2022.
Second.
All right, discussion? All right, roll call. Michelle?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, the fourth and last appointment we have, but not least, is Kate Lee for the Harbor Committee as an alternate member. So Kate, thank you for joining us. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure, thank you for having me. So I grew up in Rockport, lived in Rockport and spent a significant amount of time in the harbor, on the water, and around. Growing up, left Rockport for college and grad school and work, and then my husband and my two children and I, we moved back here 3 years ago, and we're excited to be back in Rockport. And are loving it. And I have a background in public health and environmental policy, and am currently a managing director at Brimstone Consulting here in town. And I would be honored to work with everyone.
Great. Well, I will move that the board appoint Kate Lee to the Harbor Committee as an alternate member with a term ending June 30th, 2023.
Second.
Discussion? All right, roll call. Denise?
Yes,
Mark? Mark?
you're muted.
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, thanks, everyone. Okay, moving on to discussion items. The first item on the agenda is the West Rockport Fire Station project, and Amanda Austin is with us, and Bill Lane and Bill Post. I'll look to you to take it over.
I think Jeff has a question or
Oh, real quick, Deborah, did you want to excuse or offer the invitation going forward for our committee members to either stay on or feel free to depart?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, the committee members are free to depart now. If you'd like to watch the select board, then you can do that via live stream. But we ask people to exit the meeting once their item is over.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Jennifer.
Bye.
Thank you,
Take
Dominic.
care.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Kate. Okay, thanks, Jeff.
so as Amanda gets ready to put some documents up on the screen for you folks to see, and for those that are watching on live stream, I'll just open up this topic to say that the West Rockport Fire Station Building Committee has met several times with Amanda and Bill Lane of Gartling Dworsky. Bill Lane's working on the exterior site plan and the location of where the building would be constructed on site. Just to remind everyone that the current West Rockport Fire Station was built in 1973 and basically has space to house 2 fire trucks with a maximum length of 28 feet each. What's housed there currently is engine 23, which was built in 2015, and engine 24, which was built in 1988. And engine 24 is for forest fires only. So essentially we have one frontline truck over there. At the current public safety building on Main Street, we have 3 fire trucks that are housed, and all are over 29 feet in length and 10 feet tall. So these 3 can't fit in the West Rockport Fire Station, which is why they're housed here at the public safety building on Main Street. This obviously is a problem because if something forces engine 23 out of service at the West Rockport Fire Station, we don't have any space to put another engine over there. Additionally, there are 29 members of the Rockport Fire Department currently, and 24 firefighters live near the West Rockport Fire Station. So anytime we have a response to a fire call, those that have to drive from West Rockport area to Main Street Station to pick up a fire engine, obviously lengthens the response time if it's back to going to West Rockport area. As we've talked about before, we know that the future of the fire service will be changing in the next probably several years. As more and more people are busier and busier, they have less time to commit. And at some point, we will be getting to trying to consider either per diem, part-time, or even potentially full-time firefighters sometime, I think, within the next probably 5 to 7 years, if not sooner. We also have the thought about EMS personnel while we're in the middle of an EMS evaluation with the consultants, along with Camden and Penn Bay Medical Center and Lincolnville and Hope. That's another consideration that we took into account when we were looking at potential building plans for this building. So when you do see the plans, you'll see that the building has empty space in it, if you will. Well, the thought behind that obviously is to plan ahead so that when we have more apparatus or larger apparatus that needs to be stored there, or different types of equipment that needs to be stored there, that we're not hampered by the building like we are now currently. Additionally, it's important to point out to people that the ISO rating, which is Insurance Services Organization, the current rating is based on 2 fire stations to cover the square mileage of the town. If we were to go down to 1 fire station, then that would severely affect that ISO rating. And what that does is it raises homeowners' insurance rates because then the response time and the location of those equipments of the equipment to respond to a fire is obviously less.
Bill, what is our ISO rating now, and what could it go to if it were improved?
Well, Chief, I don't know if you've got the rating off the top of your head. We just looked at it a week ago or so.
The last I checked, it was a 7.
And the scale, do you remember what the scale is?
I believe it's a 1 to 10.
Yeah.
The average is 8. Most towns are at 8. Certain cities can get down to the 6.5 range, but we are at a 7 for this town right now.
Thank you.
And obviously the other thought here is, you know, why not renovate the current building? Well, there are several issues with that. Number one, as far as I'm concerned, we would literally have to raise the roof on that building because of the heights of the current trucks, plus the future trucks when they don't get smaller when they build them. That obviously is problematic, even though the entire roof would have to be replaced anyway. We'd have to expand the building's footprint. And one of the big issues is that the building is very close to the state's right-of-way currently. It's about 15 feet, I believe. And Bill Lane can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about 15 feet from the edge of the right-of-way. So if you were to park a 28-foot fire truck in the driveway, half of the truck is in the state's right-of-way currently. So that's why we're looking to move the building back further from the right-of-way, so we can make sure that we're not parked inside that right-of-way. And as you all probably are aware, before I've arrived, the planning process has focused on the replacement of the building by the purchase or land swap, if you will, that was done previous to me coming on board here. And then, of course, the pad site construction that was done last year before. So the new building would be constructed further back from Route 17 and Route 90. Jason, I don't know if you want to add anything to that before we turn it over to Amanda and Bill.
The big thing Bill touched on, obviously, is the roof. The basement currently floods on a regular basis. We have multiple pumps in the basement to keep the basement clear of the floods. We had, I think it was 3 feet of water in there last spring. We currently have a 1/2-inch pipe running into the building. The only thing that supplies is the toilet because the water main completely is broken out front. All the windows on the east, north, and west sides, they're completely rotten out. As Bill indicated, there's currently 2 inches to the front of the 2 inches to the rear of the truck, 3 inches to the back of the truck. The town had to spend roughly $12,000 to have the Engine 23 custom built just to fit in there. There's about 2.5 feet on either side of the truck for space. We have no real storage over there for equipment. Those are the main issues, as well as the right-of-way. If the DOT ever decided that they wanted to put any type of different intersection roundabout, we wouldn't be able to pull our truck out without being out in a right-of-way, or potentially out onto Route 90 if they were to widen and put double lanes in over there.
So Amanda, if you want to pull up some of the site plan perhaps first.
Start by saying, can everyone see that screen? Bill?
Yeah, yep, there you go.
I'll zoom in as we get started here so we can see in more detail. I just wanted to start by saying that a little bit about the process we've gone through so far. To begin, we started by meeting with the core group of stakeholders, the design team and the firefighting crew mainly, for input on the programmatic needs of the building. Jason and I also toured the current main station as well as the Lincolnville Fire Station to look at the pros and cons of each of those buildings. And with that information, we started the design process in late summer of this year. we initially worked with Bill Lane, Bill Post, and Chief Peasley to review some initial design concepts we came up with. And Jason also shared those amongst the firefighter crew. After we resolved that basic concept, we reviewed that with the building committee and made some slight adjustments, and particularly took a fresh look at the exterior design concept with everyone's input. And so that brings us to where we are today. I thought we could just start the discussion by looking at the site plan that Bill has put together, and I'll zoom in here, Bill, a little bit, and you can take it from there to describe what we have.
Thank you, Amanda.
Sure.
So good evening, I'm Bill Lane. We did prepare a site plan for the new fire station. What you see at the top of the drawing is the intersection of the fire station's frontage with Route 90. You can see that it's a fairly narrow distance from the front of the existing station to the right-of-way line and then to the edge of travel way of Route 90. The distance I get when I measured, just following up on Bill's point, from the center line of the overhead door that's presently facing Route 90, it's about 22 feet to the DOT right-of-way line. So as Bill indicated, one of our apparatus, when it's sitting outside the station, does not fit without sitting in the DOT right-of-way. In addition, the center area of the existing building is got a dug foundation and basement. As Jason indicated, that is currently housing mechanical equipment only and is subject to flooding. The building is not sprinkled and the building is not ADA compliant at the moment. The other truck or apparatus bay faces west onto Route 17, Rockland Street, and has a more reasonable apron in front of it before it gets to the intersection with 90. But what we've experienced over time in the fire department is that the line of traffic that's queuing up for that intersection makes it pretty difficult for a frontline apparatus to be sited in that bay. It's much more appropriate for the apparatus to be coming out onto the West Street Route 90 curb cut. So the proposed building, which is set behind the existing station so that the existing station can stay in operation while the construction has occurred, is 5,600 square feet thereabouts and features 4 apparatus bays facing that Route 90 curb cut. Behind it is the ancillary components that Amanda will be enumerating with regard to meeting space and staff space and some sleeping quarters. So the new building would be provided with a new water service entrance, which would have adequate capacity for a sprinkler system, and new underground power supply back to a relocated genset that's actually on the existing property. So the facility would be provided with backup power off to the east of the existing building on the balance of the property. We are indicating a location of a 12 by 20 storage shed, which is currently on the property and would just be relocated in that configuration for access to it, as well as propane tanks for the facility. To the west, in the existing apron of the curb cut that faces Route 17, we would be constructing a green space that would accommodate the on-site disposal system. That's about the only place that's available for us with suitable soils to construct a new disposal system. To the south of that, we would have an 8-space parking lot providing access from the old Thorndike Homestead curb cut and new parking that would face out to Route 17. It's been mentioned that there ought to be more parking spaces available for that meeting space that's contemplated, and zooming back out and the entirety of the balance of the property, there is additional town-owned property to the east of Camden Glass that has frontage on Route 90. So it's feasible that if there was a need to have overflow parking occur, it could be done on town property. So across to the rear of the property, you will just see that southerly limit of the property is the Rocky Pond stream itself, and so we are limited by the setback, and so we're developing about as much as we can on this parcel. If there's anything in particular that's of interest, or maybe we can have some questions after Amanda's delivered some info about the station design.
Okay, let's we'll move into the floor plan then. Thank you, Bill. So as Bill mentioned, this is the Route 90 side to the left of your screen. That is the side with the vehicle bays. So there are 4 bays, as he mentioned here. One thing, I'll just zoom in here as we look at that portion. One thing to point out, and to Chief Peasley's point, is there is quite a bit more working space around each of these anticipated vehicles in front and back and to the sides, as well as the building is designed to have 16-foot high walls in the vehicle bay. So ample space above the vehicles as well for loading or service or whatever may be needed to provide, and that's something that's certainly not adequately provided now. Around the vehicle bay area, there is additional workspace, sink, countertop, storage space for any equipment that might be needed directly in the bay, as well as in the schematic plan, at least space on each end directly accessed from the doors for locker and crew equipment storage, as well as monitors for the response system that's used, similar to what's used in the main station now. Moving from the top of the plan down to the bottom, we'll start up here. Directly off that vehicle base space, there is room provided in the preliminary plan for the utility room, so sprinklers, mechanical systems, possibly future washer dryer if those needs were brought on site, either for the use of those staying in the sleeping rooms or in the future, not sure about, but whether or not wet washer and dryer might be needed for equipment and so forth. So space for that, as well as just kind of back of house storage that can be accessed directly from the vehicle bay for longer term and organizing of supplies and equipment. As we move down the plan, we come into kind of the back of house and the crew space. An office directly off the vehicle bay, which is has a visual connection through window to the vehicles that are in the bay. Space for radio, closet storage there. And then moving back into some of the spaces that the post was mentioning about the sleeping rooms being for both firefighting crew, but also possibly in the future EMS, with shower rooms and some storage again for all of those needs. Moving further down into the plan, also shared by those kind of crew back of house spaces is a kitchen with a range for use both by volunteers and crew, and also the public coming into the meeting room space. Again, you can see access, being able to lock off those crew spaces from that meeting room. The meeting room is envisioned as a space for both firefighters and the public. There is a need for space to gather for trainings and meetings for the full team to meet, to have those trainings. It's also an additional resource for the community. This space, as it's designed right now by code, allows about 48 people, so it's a good-sized space. It's also has some storage here to allow for just chairs and tables, things to make it most flexible for everyone's use. It's also accessed by another restroom. So again, just trying to separate those areas that might be most accessed by the public so that the building's most flexible. And probably the biggest thing you would pick up on here is that we've designed this as a single-story building. Some of the previous concepts were two-story, but given the space we had on site, we looked at designing this as a one-story just to make it most accessible to everyone who may be using the building, and to eliminate the complications that are, somewhat created by stairs and additional fire separations and things of a second story. So that's the basic layout. Are there any questions? It's a very quick run through, but are there any questions about the floor plan itself? And let me walk you through the elevations and we'll go from there. So the exterior, a couple of key factors driving the design of the exterior. Certainly the need for the tall walls in the vehicle bay, those being at 16 feet, and you can see that here. And then the desire to keep this in the scale of the buildings around it in the neighborhood, so a more residential scale. And we've tried to achieve those goals in a couple of ways. So the 16-foot walls are there. The vehicle bay doors are sized appropriately for the need. The other thing we've done to try and achieve the more aesthetic and scale related goals is to break down the roof line. It's varied all the way around the building, as you would have seen. This also, we've done this by breaking down the materials that we put on the facade. So certainly masonry along the bottom, both for that goal of bringing down that scale, but also protection from the vehicles coming in and out. A number of canopies to protect the entrances, again, as a decorative element, and also for the practical purpose of covering entrances. And again, those roof lines just being broken up with various siding materials. For a frame of reference, it may be helpful to note that the Camden Glass building that's adjacent is within, we think, a couple of feet of this height, so it just gives a visual frame of reference. The biggest difference here is that this building is pushed so much further back from Route 90. So you have that visual relief from the street in that manner as well. So this is the side facing, previous was the side facing Route 90. This is the side facing Route 17. Again, trying to break down those roof lines, add in some nice tall windows and daylight in the vehicle bay spaces. This is the community room space, and the entrance both into the vehicle bay and into the community rooms here. This is the opposite side of the building, so looking toward Camden Glass, vehicle bay here, and again, crew spaces on the back side. And then the other goal, because of the way the grade slopes down, was really to hold the roof lines down on the southern side, where we dip down to the creek, and so that this is the back side of the building. Again, lots of daylight into all these spaces, and accessible means of getting into the building from 4 different doorways, so plenty of accessible means into the building as well. And from the site design that Bill's provided, from parking to the building in that way as well. So that's, again, a very quick overview, but I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone might have. Okay. If there are none, I just thought I would add kind of what we're thinking our next steps are. With your approval, we would move into these. Our thought is that, and as you are aware, our ultimate goal in this phase of work, schematic design phase of work, is to get a preliminary cost estimate from a local estimator to inform the design process and to inform everyone on how much we think the building will cost. Our next steps toward doing that are meeting with the consultant engineer team. That includes mechanical plumbing engineer, certainly Bill as a civil engineer, and then structural as well, to provide some preliminary feedback about the factors they see going into the building, so that we can kind of create a more complete schematic design and a narrative to provide to that estimator. And then once that information is available, and we've reviewed it certainly through the client team that we've worked with so far, we'll be working with Bill post in the process of bringing that information back to you as well. So those are our next steps, really towards that end goal of the schematic design, trying to have that cost estimate available for everyone's understanding of the project.
Amanda, this looks like it's really very thoughtfully designed, and I was impressed with it. On the group that you've been working with, the design group and everything, is there general consensus around the design, or there's no disputes or concerns that have been expressed?
No, we haven't heard any concerns in particular about the floor plan as it relates to the exterior elevations. We went through a few different design concepts, one that maybe was slightly more contemporary. And there were some concerns with that about the way the roof shed, things like that. We took care of those in the current design. So no, we really have very much a consensus from everyone involved so far about the layout of the floor plan and the way the building appears from the exterior, and the way the site works as well.
And I know there's discussion about community meetings, as was mentioned. There's a possibility that the board could meet over there, as Phil has noted to me. There's a possibility that we have, some of our other committee meetings over there. I think it could be a great place to have some of those meetings. But I think it's very interesting the way you've laid this out with the room for the crew, and then blocking things off in a secure manner and all. That's great, I think.
Yeah, and this is Michelle, and I'll just say, thanks to the team that took the feedback. Certainly it's, as a resident of West Rockport, will be 2 doors down for me, maybe 3. I think it's an aesthetically pleasing design. Certainly one that is needed, as I was observing as I was driving up 17, the shape of the roof of the existing station. So I think, while there's still a long process to go through, I think this is great first steps. And, I think building what we need now is important for future, because we've been very lucky with volunteers. But to Bill Post's comment, we won't be so lucky in the next few years. And I think to set ourselves up with this type of design is very smart.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Can I just, one thing that I wanted to mention that I didn't earlier is the firefighters that we have are more in the West Rockport area, and we're getting less and less over here. And I've already talked to a few of the guys over here. The 4 gentlemen that are on this side of town, and I double checked with them, their average age is 75 years old. 2 of them don't drive fire trucks anymore. One of them has a business in West Rockport and is over there all day long. So we really only have part-time 1 firefighter on this side of town when I'm not right here. None of my other firefighters can afford to live on this side of town. So West Rockport, in my opinion, is going to be where pretty much the future of West Rockport, or of Rockport Fire, will be on that side of town.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Deborah?
Yes.
One thing I've been very impressed with, first of all, excellent presentation, is that the process that's been used up to this point in time has been very well executed. It's delightful to have a very functional layout and a proposal presented to the select board that is not controversial. Let's put it that way. This proposal right here should be able to go through the process, I think, and the voters will decide, do we or don't we build a fire station, but we won't have to go back and redesign it 3 times.
Yeah.
And I'll just add to that a little bit and just say that, the 2 residents that are on the building committee, as well as those firefighters that are on the building committee as well, and Michelle, I mean, as she said, as Michelle has said, and Amanda, we were really concerned about the outside of the building. We want to make sure that it fits as well as it possibly can in that neighborhood. And it does help that we can move it back away from that intersection so that it's not on top of the intersection. Of course, we have to do that anyway in order to get it away from that intersection, that right of way. But we're very cognizant of trying to minimize the look of the building. We can't get away from the fact that it's going to be a big building just because it has to be to house the apparatus. Anytime you have to put in a 30-foot vehicle in there that's over 10 feet tall, with work, with room to work on the top of the vehicles, it has to be a big building. But it's not designed to have many frills in it at all. The meeting space, I think, will be very valuable to us. As Deborah had mentioned, I talked with her about it. I can envision having select board meetings out there or committee meetings out there or whatnot, so that we can have meetings outside of the village area and have the community use that room for whatever meetings that they might have out there. First and foremost, though, it was the fact that it's a training space for the fire department. They're training in the bays currently, or if they have meetings, they're in the bays currently at the public safety building here on Main Street. And obviously that's just not an appropriate space for them to be in. And this will allow for other further joint trainings with other area departments as well, because of the size of the room to be able to accommodate firefighters. So, and I do credit the building committee for the design of the exterior of the building. It did go through several different designs, especially around the roof lines and the like. And again, it's a big roof, and there's not much you can do about that. But I think Amanda's done a very nice job in trying to minimize the impact visually of that roof. So I appreciate all of the work that's gone into this.
It might be worth noting, as we're talking about the scale of the building, that 32 feet beyond just the help of the scale of the building next to it, 32 feet is roughly comparable to a 2.5-story house. So just as you're thinking about the height of that, as Bill said, the footprint of this building is large. There's no getting away from that in order to serve the current and future needs. But at the height of the building, we are holding down as much as we possibly can to make it functional. Any other questions I can address or feedback?
Good job.
All right.
Yeah, very good presentation.
Yes, thank you, Amanda. I know this has been a lot of work put into this, and Bill as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief Peasley.
Thank you.
All right. So, Bill, do we have anything else on this topic, or are we finished?
No, we're good. We were just looking for feedback so that we could move forward with the next steps as Amanda has outlined. So I think overall, we're ready to move forward with the steps that she's outlined.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you very much.
Elaine. Okay, Bill Post, would you like to give the update on the next agenda item, which is short-term rental registration ordinance?
Sure. So the draft ordinance for discussion that's been the second draft, I guess it is, or maybe it's the third draft. I lose track. But it's in the hands of the town's attorney for his review and editing. He's also looking at the definitions to try to get them consistent with the land use ordinance, or if there are any changes that need to be in the land use ordinance. And we have obviously received several comments from the public, and all the comments have been forwarded on to the select board, and they are all added on the town's website in that location. We've tried to break them into different time periods, if you will. And I want to assure people that they all are being read, and to the extent that they can be, changes made to the proposed or draft ordinance, I should say. I think that's, from my standpoint, that's where we're at. There's not a lot of action or discussion items other than that tonight, unless Deborah or Denise want to add anything to it.
Nope.
I don't have anything to add.
No, I don't.
Is there a way that we could perhaps come up with a timeline from the date that it needs to be in to go to the printers? Back this week, workshops, any meetings that might be had?
Yep, I actually have that finished. I can get that out to the board.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure the public has their view
Yeah.
so that they can prepare themselves.
Yeah, I can put that up on the website as well with the short-term rental section. And I, you have to throw a caveat with it and say, I would put in normal, maybe additional workshops or meetings or something like that in there, but it's hard to put those into the timeline other than to say, you can see the time where there's time for meetings, and there's still plenty of time for that once we get the edited draft back from the town's attorney.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is appointment of budget committee member.
Yes, the ongoing saga of the budget committee. So I've included in your materials a list of those that received votes for the other 3-year term for the budget committee for your consideration. We did not have contact information other than mailing addresses for most of them. So the town clerk had sent a letter to each of them early last week to have them contact either her or I or both of us to let us know what their interest is in the position potentially. Keep in mind that the select board has the authority now to appoint a member to this seat. So we have a list of, I think there's 8 or so, 10, maybe 10 that received votes. Of those, to date, we have 2 that have returned back to us and said they are not interested, which is John Foss and Doc Wallace. They do not want to be considered for the seat. John Enriquez does want to be considered, and also Mario Turi does want to be considered as well. You'll note that those are the 2 that received the least amount of votes. Not that that necessarily matters, of course, because again, it's the board's appointment. So at this point, I think it makes sense for us to wait to hear back from the others that we haven't heard from, unless the board wants to go in a different manner.
So Bill, I'm sorry, for these that don't have any indication next to them, we have not heard back from them, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I would support that approach, Bill. It would be good to hear back from these folks, the remaining folks on the list.
And my thought was that I would follow up with those that say that they are interested, and then either have them fill out the committee application just so that the board has some background on them, or provide us with their, a letter of interest or something along those lines explaining their interest and their qualifications.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and can we just set a deadline, if you will? I mean, I know we've got the holidays coming up, but if we can set a kind of line in the sand as to when we would expect to hear from people, just so it doesn't linger.
Yeah, we'll probably have to end up sending out another letter from those that we haven't heard from, and we can certainly send. Why do we have to do that, Bill? I mean, we're pretty good. I can look at that list, and I'm sure Randy could look at it, and he could probably go over and talk to them and find them during the day. I mean, there are phone numbers you can get via Randy, I think, to call them rather than sending a letter. There's good people on there that I'm looking at that represent West Rockport and Glen Cove. And we need these people sooner rather than later.
Well, this is why it's a discussion, Mark, so that I can hear what the board's opinion is as to how you want to proceed forward. I mean, if the board members know, these individuals, it certainly doesn't hurt to have them.
I know a couple of them was going to reach out to them and just gauge their interest.
I do not know any of the remaining names that haven't signaled intent to you.
Yeah, I don't either. So
I don't either, but I would recommend if we could call people, that obviously would help to expedite. I don't know any of them though.
Yeah, there's not that many. I agree with that. There's no reason not to call them.
Richard Lane lives on West Street Extension, so doesn't Scott Robinson. Richard Lane is the board of the West Rockport Church. He was on a nonprofit board over in Camden, a longtime resident in Rockport. Charlie Plaisted, Glen Cove, also has been on several boards in the past. and I think he might have been on the select board at one point in time. I don't recall, but I mean, these people are easily found. You know, send a letter that, you know, anyway, we need it done sooner rather than later.
Well, I guess realistically, we can't vote on them till our meeting in January. Anyway, is that right?
Well, that was the plan, was to hopefully have the information so that the board can make a selection at your meeting in January, your first meeting. So
That won't delay the budget process, right? I mean,
no, the budget committee doesn't start meeting until end of February, beginning of March.
I think you've got time there to run down and find the folks one way or another, have them fill out the committee application and go through the standard process that everyone else does.
Yeah.
And have it ready for the January meeting and we can go.
Sounds good. I think we're in agreement, Bill.
Okay, thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda is to discuss recommended priorities for ORC consideration. Bill?
Yeah, I just thought that it would be important to try to focus or at least provide some topics to the ORC, the Ordinance Review Committee, as they gear up to start meeting after the first of the year. I know staff here in the Planning and Code Department have identified some areas that they'd like the ORC to review, and one of those being sign standards.
Mm-hmm.
The code officer is always frustrated with the sign standards and how he has to apply things, and the fact that there's some confusion there as well within the standards. So I know that's one off the top.
And we have learned from our town council that we don't meet sort of legal standards for a sign ordinance. So
right,
that's
right,
good.
exactly. So that's one anyway. So I wanted to bring it to the board to see if there are others that you have that you've identified or have thoughts on.
I think it would be important for them to look at density requirements because, you know, we've talked about workforce housing. We've talked about, you know, the obvious need for that. We've talked about that with respect to the RES site that was raised as something that needs to be addressed before we can really even do anything, you know, substantively with that site. So I would like to see them address density.
Are there any others? Any other thoughts from?
I wondered about, there's that parking ordinance that's separate from the land use ordinance parking requirements. Who's responsible for that, or is that something the ORC should deal with, or is that a separate?
That's strictly the select board that has actually has authority to change and adopt that. So that's one of those that's the parking task force has brought up that needs to be.
Because it's a total mess and not enforced.
Yes, it needs a complete rewrite. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that would be coming from the parking committee as opposed to with staff as opposed to the ORC.
Right. That would be the plan. And we actually had a parking task force meeting today and one last week as well. And we've started narrowing down on looking at identifying parking spaces. And now we're starting to look at timed parking, you know, what kind of hours to put and things like that. So that would all go into that parking ordinance, or revised parking ordinance.
And then that would come to the select board. And does that go to, do we have to have that ready for June, or is that?
No, the select board has the authority by state law to pass that ordinance.
Okay.
Are there any others? And certainly if you've got others, you know, you can bring them to me, send them to me.
So then fundamentally, these are things with the land use ordinance that we would want the ORC to look at.
Ideally, yes. Yeah, that's generally
what,
right. That's generally what they've been doing, is the land use ordinance.
And I don't know, I know Bill Napower has felt like our land use ordinance basically needs to be rewritten from the get-go.
Yeah, it does. The thought there, though, is that we really need to get the comprehensive plan done first, so that then the land use ordinance would follow from that. So we'd have a comprehensive rewrite after that. But in the meantime, there are areas like the sign standards, the density, that could be addressed in the meantime. And I know Orion is is working on trying to develop a schedule timeline with the pandemic conditions for the comprehensive plan committee to try to kick that off after the first of the year, potentially in smaller groups to try to work on different parts of the plan.
Okay.
So he's putting together a plan and a schedule for that. It certainly is hard for that committee to meet even by Zoom with, I mean, what is there, 20 something members of that committee with staff.
Okay.
So if we can do it into smaller groups and work on different parts of the plan, then that's what he's thinking. So
That's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
okay.
I guess that's it then. Yeah. I don't see anybody with any other suggestions. Oh, I know what I was going to ask too, Bill, is that with the Economic Development Committee now really with the full composition and going forward, maybe maybe there'll be some opportunity for the Economic Development Committee and the ORC to coordinate on some recommendations as well, obviously.
We do need to get bylaws and that sort of thing ready for the Economic Development Committee as well.
We do. We absolutely do. And a mission statement.
Yes.
Okay. All right. With that, we're on to select board liaison reports. And if you guys don't mind, I'd like to just go first because we were just talking about parking. And as Bill said, that there was a parking committee that met this afternoon. And while we can't identify the locations, there has been some discussion in the past about, potential areas for parking lots and so forth. And I just wanted the board to know that those are being addressed. So it's been a while since some people had identified some potential parcels. So that is moving along. Bill, did you want to add anything on the parking committee?
I just think there's so much that committee, that task force is doing that, there's a ton of stuff that we're looking at. We're looking at all of the streets emanating out from Central Street. We've looked at all the traffic counts today. We looked at traffic flow. And as Deborah said, we've narrowed down a list of potential areas for potential parking lots, whether they're satellite lots for employees or whether they're lots for events, things like that. And there's some action items that we'll be moving forward on. And I think probably in January, we'll provide maybe an interim report to the board at that point about, what we've been working on, what we found, what the action steps are that we're moving forward.
And that's limited to parking. So traffic, I'm hearing from more and more residents the concern about how our way through Pascal over to Union has become such a bypass of the issues on Route 1 with just big delivery trucks barreling through who have no business. They have no business along the route. They're just trying to not have to end up at that stop sign on Route 1 in Camden. Is anybody looking in? That's not part of this parking committee's, or is it?
Not really. I mean, we're looking at traffic counts just from a perspective of, where is the traffic flowing? What streets are being used? I mean, we certainly can see we can certainly see the traffic on Central Street from Pascal to Central and then up to Union, but it does drop off too, interestingly, when they turn onto Union from Central. So it's interesting to look at the data, but yeah, we're not focusing necessarily on traffic and the traffic flows.
Mm-hmm.
No, but one of the things the group is focused on is the potential of one-way streets, and that gets into traffic, certainly.
Could create a disincentive to do what's happening.
Yeah, right. I mean, you know, create a one-way street and traffic goes to another place. So to the extent that, and all of that has to do with parking. So they do overlap in some of the areas that the task force is looking at.
Yeah, they certainly do. And of course, then you're just pushing the traffic to another location. So.
Well, Route 1 would be a good place, but I don't know what you do with that stop sign.
Right. And I was just going to say, I will leave Midcoast Solid Waste for Denise to report on, other than we have a meeting on Wednesday. I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
I don't think we haven't had a meeting since October. So
we're now going to meetings every 2 months instead of monthly, thank God, on Midcoast Solid Waste. So yeah, so we do have a meeting on Wednesday, and that's about it. Okay. So next.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Go ahead. You've already heard the layout from Bill in the committee about the fire station that Michelle and I had attended last. Onto the Conservation Commission, I think it was the 9th we met. And they talked about sea level rising, and the Harbor Committee doing a walk through the park Saturday, discuss mitigation, and storm drain labeling. They want to be able to find, they have some material that you can affix next to a storm drain, which basically tells people don't be stupid and throw things in there. But if you have to get to that point, it's beyond help anyway. What else? We talked about the purchasing, you know, and how that things need to go through Abby, I think was part of what they had talked about. And then Abby submits it to Megan, and then Megan, and Abby, because she's the department liaison for the conservation. But anyway, ultimately gets to Megan, and then approved by Megan, Bill, and myself. They're submitting the budget for 21-22 is pretty much finalized. Minor tweakings. I don't anticipate much difference than the year before. Just going through some of the notes from what Megan had taken, and I will forward them to Bill and Diane so that they can spread them out appropriately. And surveys out to people. And I talked about using the newsletter that we have if they wanted to get their word out on whatever the event was. And the next meeting is January 14th. That's about the extent of it on that one. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Who wants to go next?
My update is very quick. You already heard from Bill Post the update from the investment committee. So they're working hard to update their information. And the planning board meets on Thursday, and we already covered West Rockport Fire Station. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Michelle. Jeff, do you have anything?
Yes, the Pathways Committee met on December 2nd. Recall for all that is a combined Camden Rockport Pathways Committee. Heavy discussion on the Camden side of that. The Harbor Committee met on the following night on the 3rd. And one thing that is a challenge to that committee right now is there have been some requests to basically rent out slip space on the town dock that they are wrestling with in terms of what is the direction from the town, what is the intent of that space, and those types of things. So they're working through that issue, and they'll provide guidance. That's not to say that it's going to happen or not going to happen. I'm just saying that it's been, the harbor has been broached with people wishing to rent full-time dock space. And there's nothing in the harbor ordinance that clearly prevents that from happening. So they'll work through that. They also went through a Saturday morning to look at dinghy and dock space as the challenges continue there regarding dinghy and inflatable space, use of docky, etc. So they were on foot earlier this weekend. And then we have an investment committee coming up after the first. I'm sorry, capital improvement committee coming after the first of the year. That's it.
Let's see, Opera House Committee had a meeting. We found that this has been a good opportunity to work on maintenance items with the Opera House for really all practical purposes being closed. Drew has been working on, there's some savings from the air conditioning project, which may allow us to at least do phase 1 on stage lighting. The stage lights are 50 years old and really don't work. I mean, the banks of them don't work. So performers or other entities have had to basically bring in their own lighting. The costs on those have gone down significantly since this kind of a project was first looked at. So they're, Drew's getting bids, working with Bill on that, with the Opera House Committee recommending the phase 1 of the lighting, which I'm sure he's taken to Bill. Also a strong desire to have the front of the Opera House lit up, take advantage of the 3 lights that are there. And I just went, and turns out you can buy photo eye light bulbs. So I just stuck photo eye light bulbs in the 2 smaller doors that have lights. And Drew's going to work with me to put the other one on in the bigger fixture. So those lights are on now, and it looks beautiful. They're off during the day, which so it's good. Legacy Rockport, we'll be meeting this coming Monday, next Monday. Jeff Parker's been working on a video that will be, we're going to try to work out just the participants in the video would meet at the Opera House to look at that video. That would be in January now, Bill. And we'll, with all precautions in terms of masks and social distancing and all of that. And then we'll figure out a way to have that video be available for people to either download or, somehow other showings of it so we can see it, because it's pretty cool. ZBA has now had three meetings on the hotel appeal. The last one was December 9th. There were some new submissions that sort of threw the board members for a loop, and they ended up basically deciding everybody needed more time to read all the materials that were coming at them. So that's going to be on December 22nd at 6 p.m. So hopefully decisions will be made at that hearing. Kudos to those members of the ZBA. I mean, they are just doing yeoman's work for the town. These have been 3 and 4 hour meetings. So Parks Committee met, working on, more details related to Memorial Park, some discussion. It turns out that the town got a grant back in the 60s for Mary Lee Park to build sort of an amphitheater, have music, small music concerts down in that park. And we got the money, but we didn't do that. And Doug Cole ran across that in talking to some federal guy about these grants. And he said, wait a minute, I think you guys have a grant. And so he dredged up this grant from 1965. So we're looking into, the Parks Committee sort of interested in whether there can be sort of some small scale music down, when you look at Mary Lee Park, it can sort of look a little bit like an amphitheater, small. So anyway, that's one of the projects.
So Bill, sorry, I just have a question about that. How would we not, if we have the money, how would we not know we had the money, or how does that work?
I don't know what it got spent on.
1965.
This was 60 years
No,
ago.
I know. So it got spent on something else. Is that the deal?
I'm assuming so. And it wasn't just for that purpose. That was one of the things that they could do. And I think it included probably landscaping and some of the shrubbery. But funny that the Parks Committee had been thinking, gosh, this looks like it'd be a nice little amphitheater. And then to find that, 60 years ago, some other committee thought also the same. So, so they're also discussing memorial benches and tree policies, how we've gotten some requests to put in favorite trees in some of our parks. So we'll have to decide how that works. and more sort of publicity on the Memorial Bench program. Some new signage. So Abby had been interested in installing some sort of playground in Harbor Park, maybe up near where the chess set is. And the Parks Committee sort of felt like maybe it's just as simple as having some signage so out-of-town visitors can find Walker Park, because that's sort of tucked away, but it's a wonderful playground area. So rather than having a bunch of playgrounds, maybe we just work on some signage and maybe even sort of a walking map of what's available once you're in Harbor Park and where you can go. So I think that's it.
Great, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is to move into executive session to discuss a personnel matter. Somebody wants to make a motion?
I move the board convene an executive session pursuant to 1 MRS 406(6)A to discuss a personnel matter.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call. Jeff?
Yes.
Denise?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right.
We'll just wait for Bruce to give us the all okay sign that we're off the air.